Hello. Today we will explore the rise of the Islamic empires from late antiquity through the Middle Ages, and how art objects and monuments communicated the important tenets of the Islamic faith and established the power and priorities of the political entities across this vast stretch of space and time. Our map here shows the wide extent of the spread of the Islamic religion during the early caliphates, or empires under the control of Islamic leaders called caliphs. This influence began in the Arabian Peninsula and quickly extended as far east as the edges of modern India and as far west as the coast of modern Portugal. The Islamic faith begins with the life and teachings of the Prophet Muhammad. Muslims, or those who are believers of the Islamic faith, consider Muhammad to be the last prophet in a long line of other prophets and messengers of God already revealed through the other monotheistic religions of Judaism and Christianity. Just as those two religions rely on scriptures to facilitate their religious faith and practice, Islam is also based on the scriptures called the Quran, which contain the teachings and doctrines of the faith. Muhammad was originally from Mecca in modern Saudi Arabia, and thus the city is an extremely holy location for Muslims. It was here that Muhammad received visions, which were revelations from God, and he shared these revelations and attracted followers. Of course, he encountered significant doubts and resistance as well, and after losing the protection of his family members upon their death, was forced to flee. It was in 622 that Muhammad fled to Medina, and this exodus marks the first year of the Islamic calendar. In subsequent years, Islam spread under the leadership of four caliphs, continuing the work begun by Muhammad. One faction, called Shia, wanted Muhammad's successor to be his closest relative, named Ali. Another faction, called Sunni, wanted Muhammad's successors to be chosen by his followers, resulting in the choice of three individuals who had been close to Muhammad, called the rightly guided caliphs: Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman. As these caliphs ruled, Islam was able to spread rapidly because of the different methods used in different regions. In some cases, it was adopted by local noble families. In others, it was spread through commercial contact, missionary work, or military and political conquest. Although stylistic preferences vary from region to region, there are some shared characteristics among the art and architecture of the Islamic empires. Unlike the art of our ancient civilizations, art of the Islamic empires did not represent religious figures as the main subject matter. Instead, highly intricate designs made up of repeating geometric or vine-like patterns called arabesque, as well as highly decorative lines of text called calligraphy, adorn the surfaces of both two-dimensional and three-dimensional forms in Islamic art. Many of the art objects and monuments did build upon the styles and innovations of the civilizations before these Islamic empires, though, especially in the use of Roman and Byzantine architectural traditions. The first early Islamic caliphate that we will review is the Umayyad dynasty, which conquered territory stretching from the Arabian Peninsula north to the areas of the Near East, the region of ancient Mesopotamia, east to the edges of northern India, and west across North Africa and up through the Iberian Peninsula. Damascus became the capital of the Umayyad dynasty, now the capital of modern Syria. Under the Umayyad leaders, Arabic became the official language, and Arabic authorities replaced Greek, Persian, and other political officials from previous regimes. To pronounce the achievement of this Arab dynasty and the importance of their Islamic faith, large-scale monuments in the form of mosques and shrines were constructed throughout the empire. By the 8th century CE, the Umayyad dynasty could not withstand their military defeats and challenges from other Islamic noble families. In fact, members of the Umayyad family were murdered, with the exception of one individual who escaped to Al-Andalus, the territory of the Iberian Peninsula controlled by the Umayyads. This was Abd al-Rahman, who was accepted as a legitimate ruler and continued the Umayyad dynasty from his new capital in Córdoba. One of the most enduring and impressive monuments built by the Umayyad dynasty is a shrine called the Dome of the Rock, located on a sacred spot called the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. This is the highest spot in Jerusalem and is considered sacred by Jews, Christians, and Muslims. This building encapsulates an enormous boulder that is believed to be the spot where the ancient Old Testament prophet Abraham was asked to sacrifice his son Isaac in an act of obedience to God, before God stops the sacrifice once Abraham's faith and loyalty is proven. Additionally, this rock is believed by Muslims to be the spot where the Prophet Muhammad began his mystical night journey through many layers of heaven, led by the angel Gabriel, where he met the prophets of the Old and New Testaments who had come before him before finally seeing God and returning back to earth. In a sign of political and religious authority, this enormous building towers over the Jerusalem landscape. It displays an octagonal shape that had been used in the churches of the Byzantine Empire, the previous political entity in control of this region before being conquered by the Muslims. It also displays elaborate mosaics of geometric designs on the exterior walls, also reminiscent of the intricate and prolific mosaics affiliated with religious decoration of the churches of the Byzantine Empire. Finally, a large golden dome sits atop the structure, shimmering in the light as if touched by heaven itself. Inside the Dome of the Rock, a circular colonnade surrounds the boulder itself, with rows of arches supported by Corinthian columns of colorful marble. The ceiling spaces are covered in mosaics and gold leaf, creating an overwhelming visual field of pattern and colors in repetitive and alternating fashion. Unlike the decorations of the Byzantine churches or the Roman temples, these decorations do not portray any human forms, neither religious nor political individuals. Instead, there are striking, abstract designs of geometric lines and shapes or swirling motifs of vines and flowers. Similar construction and decorative preferences were transferred to Al-Andalus when the Umayyad dynasty shifted west. The Great Mosque of Córdoba is not a shrine that marks a sacred spot, of course, but instead is a place where Muslims would gather for prayer. It has to be much larger to accommodate the entire population at once. The Great Mosque of Córdoba builds upon many of the Roman architectural traditions that existed here before the Muslims, making use of the long, rectangular shape of the basilica and the organizing effects of the arches and columns as well. From this view, we can also see the beautiful courtyard filled with orange trees. Fountains were also placed in this courtyard, so Muslims could complete the ritual cleansing that would occur before prayers and could gather socially. It is said that Ibn al-Rahman planted the orange trees because of the bittersweet experience he had. Though he was shocked and saddened at the deaths of his family, he was lucky to be alive and welcomed as a ruler in this land. Inside the Great Mosque, there is a hypostyle prayer hall, or a prayer hall organized with rows of columns holding up 2 layers of arches. These are called horseshoe arches, as they bow inward slightly at the bottom of the arch, mimicking the shape of a horseshoe. The red and white stripes create a dizzying effect on the viewer, making them feel small and humbled. Marble Corinthian columns support these arches, repurposing Roman materials and techniques. From the Middle East to the Iberian Peninsula, the Umayyad dynasty certainly left its mark on the land with these monumental religious buildings. The Abbasid dynasty is considered the golden age of Islam. The Abbasids moved the capital to Baghdad in modern Iraq, and the city was transformed into an exciting center of learning. From literature to science to mathematics to art, Baghdad was the site of some of the most impressive advancements in Islamic society, or any society for that matter. The Abbasids worked with many of the traditions of the Byzantine and Persian empires that had occupied this vast territory before them, preserving features such as infrastructure and architecture. As such, they recognized the importance of creating an inclusive community centered on their learning and faith rather than their regional identity or Arab lineage. One of the notable features of the Abbasid dynasty was its embrace of the achievements of civilizations before it. Here we see a page from the text De Materia Medica, an ancient Greek text translated into Arabic. It depicts a physician concocting a special treatment in a large cauldron, described as a mixture of honey and water that treated symptoms such as loss of appetite and weakness. The physician is shown mixing the thick liquid before spooning it into the cup he holds in his left hand, which presumably will then be offered to the patient seated to the left of the cauldron. The scene is segmented to suggest a series of rooms, perhaps a pharmacy or other such office, where medicines would be dispensed. In the upper register, large urns are lined up, and an assistant works in the upper right corner, and another drinks from a cup in the upper left. The curtains and balcony give us a sense of a real space that we could find, but its presence floating on the page does not give us any more information about where in the world this is supposed to be. The text that accompanies the imagery is carefully scripted to fill up roughly the same amount of space left to right as the image does on the page, creating a sense of balance between the text and the imagery. The Seljuks were Turks of nomadic origins who moved eastward to control stretches of Anatolia, modern Turkey, Iraq, and Iran by the end of the 11th century. They were not known for a uniform governmental entity, and independent regional institutions were largely in charge. Under the Seljuks, though, important building campaigns and artistic practices flourished, especially in Iran. These projects are notable for the combinations of artistic and cultural influences they bear, especially those whose creation and expansion spanned several decades and even centuries. One such structure is the Great Mosque of Isfahan, which has undergone a number of building campaigns over an incredibly long period of time. Unlike the hypostyle layout of the Great Mosque of Cordoba, the layout of the Great Mosque of Isfahan is a 4-Iwan design, meaning there are 4 walls with large niches carved out of them that surround an open courtyard space. This mosque is located in the bustling urban center of Isfahan, and emerging from the noisy and energetic marketplace into this wide expanse of open space must be a transformative experience. The prayer halls surround the courtyard, supported by large columns and roofs overhead, where people could pray in unison. It seems easy to get disoriented and turned around in such an expansive space with tall walls overhead. So it's important for Muslims attending prayers to locate the direction of Mecca, the birthplace of the Prophet Muhammad, where prayer is always directed. As such, there is an elaborate Qibla Iwan, a large niche within the wall that shows the direction of Mecca. What we see here is the South Iwan, the Qibla Iwan. There is no space left undecorated. Beautiful blue tiles outline the structure in alternating patterns of floral and arabesque motifs. The gold tiles in the interior space of the Iwan stand out clearly against the blue backdrop, with intricate repeating geometric patterns filling the surface of these hollowed block-like components. One's eye would be constantly moving, dancing up and down, side to side, as it traces the intertwined and seemingly unending designs. The sheer size of the Iwan adds to this overwhelming experience, since any person standing within its walls would be completely engulfed by the colors and patterns, creating an otherworldly sensation and effect. Back in the Iberian Peninsula, the Nasrid dynasty ruled from the early 13th century through the end of the 15th century, when the last Nasrid ruler was expelled from their capital of Granada on January 2nd, 1492, by the Catholic monarchs King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Castile and Aragon. Before they were driven out, the Nasrid rulers spent a great deal of time and money building and decorating elaborate palace complexes. In addition to the impressive buildings, in both scale and layout, these complexes also included intricately woven textiles and detailed ceramics of bright colors and dizzying designs. The Alhambra means the red castle, for the color of its exterior surface. As you can see from this photograph, the Alhambra is an extremely large space to serve just as the living quarters of the Sultan and his royal family. In fact, the Alhambra was much more than a palace. It was a fortress with soldiers stationed and housed within its walls, guarding the 30 towers that are dotted along the walled perimeter. There are 4 official gates of entry into this massive complex, suggesting that entry in and out was tightly monitored and controlled, which makes sense considering the main functions of this place. In addition to housing the royal family and the military, it also housed important individuals who worked in the court of the ruler and helped carry out the state affairs. The different parts of the Alhambra are intertwined together with meandering paths filled with flowers and orchards, so being in and walking through this vast space was meant to be a very sensory stimulating experience. The sounds of the breeze and the birds, the smells of the flowers and the trees, and the colorful sights of the sky, the foliage, and the fountains made this a truly luxurious space. One of the most interesting parts of the Alhambra is the attention to the small, decorative details paid to both the exterior and interior spaces throughout. Here we can see the inside of an arcaded colonnade that surrounded the Court of the Lions, a square-shaped open-air courtyard centered by a fountain supported by 12 small-scale sculptures of lions standing at attention. Our eyes cannot focus on the small details of the text in the calligraphy or design in the arabesque pattern and still take in the bigger visual effect. As such, you would be encouraged to take in the movements and swirls of the patterns at a slower pace, allowing time for contemplation and reflection, while also being overwhelmed with the level of detail all around you. This structure was built in the 14th century by Muhammad V, during his second rule from 1362 to 1391. The hydraulic engineering of this space is a central piece of achievement. Water can flow both in and out from the central fountain to shallow pooled sources under the arcade through long, narrow, low passageways in all four directions. This allowed for a constant movement of water, giving the impression of a never-ending supply of the most vital source in this hilltop palace inside the hot, dry landscape of southern Spain. For over 200 years, the Safavid dynasty ruled over modern Iran. The first ruler of this dynasty, Shah Ismail Safavi, declared Shia Islam the official religion of his state and unified Iran against the threats from would-be conquerors to the east and the west. The descendants of this Shah were great patrons of the arts, especially miniature painting and manuscript illumination. The Safavid rulers also led building campaigns for religious structures, such as mosques and shrines, and for political structures, such as palace complexes. We are going to take a look at one beautiful example of art from this impressive dynasty. The production of illuminated manuscripts flourished throughout the Safavid dynasty, and manuscript illumination and miniature painting had traditionally been important art forms taught in great centers of art training throughout Central Asia. This page depicts one scene within the long epic poem about a Sasanian prince named Bahram Gur and his journey to find and wed the most beautiful princesses from the 7 different climates or regions of the world. Each night he visits a different princess, whose individual pavilion was built according to the unique color, temperament, and even ruling planet associated with the climate from which she came. During the prince's visit, the princess tells him a story in a manner that reflects her individual character. And here we have the princess in the Black Pavilion from India. Bahram Gur visits her on Saturday, the day ruled by Saturn, and we can see many of the attributes of this day illustrated in the color and design choices. The black background of the center floor space and the walls identify this location as the Black Pavilion, as does the carpet supporting the containers of wine and food between Bahram Gur on the left and the princess on the right, and the fabric draped around the shoulders of the princess. The artist has included singers and musicians in the bottom corners, displaying a moment of revelry and song. The visual space is segmented into orderly, balanced portions of individual figures and decoration, with elements rising upward to suggest depth. Just like in the decorative architectural monuments throughout the Islamic empires, here every possible part of the surface that isn't occupied by a figure or their possessions is covered in repeated motifs of flowers and vines, or geometric designs, giving the viewer's eye a lot to take in. It would be impossible to notice every detail at once, so instead, the viewer's gaze would travel along the surface of the illumination, within the visual parts of the narrative unfolding, in the same way that the spoken or textual parts would be revealed as well. It is a beautiful example of highly detailed and intricately decorated miniature painting. This concludes our lecture on the art and architecture of the Islamic empires.